When you're young and looking forward, the future seems far away and seems to take so long to get here. But as we age and look back, we wonder how time and events went by so quickly. Hello, I'm Scott Foster, and welcome again to Rain Country. This old fire truck is an important part of the history of Douglas. It started answering the bell in 1937. But looking back even from that point, Douglas already had more than half a century of history. And an important part of the history of Douglas is associated with two major fires and a disastrous mine cave-in. The city of Douglas, across Gastineau Channel from Juneau, emerged just after the 1880 Juneau gold rush began. In 1881, John Treadwell bought a Douglas Island claim for $400. However, by 1887, it was the site for the largest gold stamp mill in the world and produced $500,000 in gold. By the mid-1890s, the Alaska Treadwell Gold Mining Company had 3 neighboring mining operations, 2 of which it financed and managed. This mining district in Douglas was known as Treadwell and had exclusive facilities for the miners and their families. By 1910, the population of Treadwell and Douglas had reached 3,000, more than twice the size of Juneau, in addition to several hundred Taku Indians who lived in a nearby village site.
The first time I saw Treadwell was January 1913 when the steamship Jefferson pulled in. I had been raised in the logging districts of Washington and had never seen a mining town. It all seemed so new and wonderful, walking up a busy dock, over train tracks, and amid all manner of activities. I had never heard so much noise going on when we reached the street. I heard this great roar and was told it was the stamp mills, which never stopped day or night. I was soon to learn what a great industry the Treadwell mines really were. They employed around 2,000 men and worked year-round, 3 shifts a day. The Treadwell Gold Mining Company had a general store where the men and their families could purchase most anything one needed. Besides the store, there was a large boarding house and rows of rooming houses. Just beyond the store was the clubhouse, also an auditorium where picture shows were given. And next to the clubhouse was the swimming tank. Here the men could have showers and swim. Also, on Friday it was Ladies' Day. We women had lots of good times playing around in the tank. It was real exciting living in Douglas. There were lots of social activities, several lodges where we could attend dances or card parties, and on summer days there were band concerts with the band marching down the street and an occasional all-night outdoor dance. In the spring of 1917, there began to float around rumors that the mines were caving in. It was said that certain bosses had ordered some retaining walls taken down on account of the rich ore they carried. Whatever the cause, on Friday, when the ladies were enjoying their day in the swimming tank, all of a sudden the water left the tank in one big gulp. Later, large fissures were found all around the building and in the street. The tension was great, and some men refused to go to work, but on the whole, most of them went as usual. I believe it was a Saturday night, and my husband was supposed to be relieved at 11 o'clock. As it happened, his relief man was ill. I spent a very restless night alone with my little girl, and in the morning he came and said, "Well, she's gone."
Gone were the Treadwell mines. Cracks and small cave-ins had been a problem for several years. The mine shafts extended far below the floor of Gastineau Channel, so on April 21, 1917, when water began coming through the cracks, it wasn't long before the enormous pressure of earth and water destroyed the Treadwell operations. And though no human lives were lost, the community suffered greatly. Mamie Jensen was born in 1906 in the apartment above her father's store on Front Street in Douglas, and remembers what it was like before and after the cave-in.
We had grocery stores and bakery stores and drugstore and marvelous photography shop. And of course there were opera houses, you know, along Front Street there, where the saloons were. The line where the ladies lived was off of D Street, and First, down there. And us kids weren't allowed to go down there. No, you stay away from there. Oh, we had a marvelous candy store. The man, his name was Levers. And their basement door would be open, and you'd smell this candy, And here, this Mr. Levers would be throwing this taffy up on the hook, and oh, gosh, we'd just stand there and drool. After the mine closed down, things gradually changed, and the only meat market we had available at that time was the Treadwell Meat Market. I always can remember this because we always looked forward to getting a dill pickle out of the pickle barrel. Then maybe if the butcher was generous, he'd give us a wiener too.
3 years after the cave-in, Douglas's population had dropped from 3,000 to 1,200. But the mine's closing wasn't the only problem. It was fire that brought the real tragedy. The first big fire in 1911 claimed 19 buildings. In 1926, fire struck again, destroying the Taku Indian village and most of the Treadwell. Mamie was out of town during the 1926 fire, but was in her home on 5th Street with her husband Marcus during the fire of 1937. They had recently taken over the family business on Front Street when the fire swept through, destroying their livelihood.
The firemen were fighting it, and of course it was blowing so hard it was just, sweeping up the street, and the cinders and the sparks and everything. And the firemen had hose hooked up to the hydrant, as I remember, and the nozzle got plugged with a little pebble or a little rock in the nozzle, and it stopped the pressure of the water coming through to Front Street. So they had no water pressure, and they couldn't fight it down at Front Street. And as a consequence, everything would just blew up the hill.
Most of the Douglas Business District was lost, along with many homes, the school, post office, city hall, and the fire hall.
Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible. They had to decide whether we were going to stay in Douglas and start over, or whether we were going to move to Juneau or do something else.
They decided to stay and rebuild, as did many staunch Douglasites. But by 1939, the population was a mere 522. The closing of the mines, the fire, and a bridge joining Douglas with Juneau all contributed to the decline. Douglas had lost a lot of her valor and identity, and it became more and more difficult to justify having a separate city system. Finally, in July of 1970, Douglas, somewhat reluctantly, was legally unified with the city of Juneau. Today, Douglas survives as a bedroom community. The population south of the bridge is approximately 2,000. The Treadwell district is a city park, and there is little resemblance to the mining days of Douglas. But the feeling of pride and community still survive.
Well, I think there's always a loyalty there for people who live there, especially people who live there a long time. And there are quite a few of us yet over there that, Douglas is Douglas, my hometown.